With the 9th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, Jacksonville Jaguars select C.J. Henderson, defensive back, Florida. Bavon Chaisson, LaVisca Chenault, Devon Hamilton.
The Smoothie King, Ben Barch, Josiah Scott, who's Shaquille Waterman, Daniel Thomas, the safety, wideout Colin Johnson, Jake Luton, the Oregon State quarterback,
Tyler Davis, tight end, Chris Claybrooks.
I like what the Jags are doing on the defensive side of the ball.
The names of the 12 players selected by the Jacksonville Jaguars in the 2020 NFL Draft, a draft that happened nowhere and everywhere all at the same time, including the homes of GM Dave Caldwell and head coach Doug Marrone, as you see. And welcome into the Jaguars Draft Recap show presented by Florida Blue in the pursuit of health. JP Shadrick with you, and the Jaguars entered with 12 draft picks. They came away with 12 selections in the 2020 NFL Draft. No trading happened, and the Jags have filled some immediate needs, and they built some depth and found some guys to develop moving ahead. We have full team coverage coming up, including Brian Sexton and John Oehser a little bit down the line. Well, let's start with Ashlyn Sullivan, visiting with Jaguars General Manager Dave Caldwell immediately after the draft.
Here with Jaguars General Manager Dave Caldwell right after the draft has ended. 12 picks. Dave, do you know what day it is? 12 picks. It's a lot of picks to cover, a lot of hard work these past 3 days.
It is, and it's really a testament to our scouting staff, our coaching staff, all the IT people, and we pulled it off, and it was. I feel really good right now, and our team should feel good, and our city should feel good because I feel like everybody involved did a hell of a job.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this virtual thing, it went pretty smooth, maybe even smoother than people expected.
It did, and a lot of credit to the NFL and the league office for how they did it. And I was skeptical, I'll be honest with you, but at the end of the day, it worked out really well.
With 12 picks, I think some people expected either trades up, trades down, movement, at least with those 12 picks. Why did you feel the need to stay with the 12 picks and bring in 12 new guys in Jacksonville?
Well, the main part was because we wanted players and we wanted depth, we wanted competition, but we also liked the players that were in the draft. And we were looking at it, we're like, we wish we had more picks. And we just wanted to be patient. Coach Marrone, Shad, Tony, and I, we talked about it. And we said, let the draft come to us. And there'll be good players to pick that fit our culture, fit what Coach Marrone and the coaching staff are looking for in a player, team-oriented guys that are tough, competitive, and we feel like we got those guys.
In moments after you called the picks, I was able to talk to them, and it seems like every single pick I talked to was either a team captain, a Boy Scout, something great off the field. So it's obviously that character was a huge emphasis in this draft. Is it even more so than we think?
Well, it always is. And there's always a risk reward. And when you know the players you're going to draft and you know some of their makeup and hey, you know what, players can develop and grow and mature and stuff like that too. So, but we just felt really good about the skill set of the players, but also like their makeup. And that's important for us. And that's important as we go forward. And this is a big foundation building piece for this organization and 12 picks. And we want these guys to be around for a long period of time.
And these are long days at times, tiring days, but we watched Tyler Davis's War Room call, and you can see it on Jaguars.com now for fans watching. When you have emotion like that, when a player is breaking down, does that make it all worth it?
Yeah, and he's a guy that, and actually Tony Khan and I went and scouted that game. We went to North Carolina State, and he's a guy that I was looking at before I went there, and I'm like, this guy's a pretty interesting prospect, and he's big, he's athletic, he catches the ball, he'll block. And there wasn't a lot of buzz about him, and we were kind of keeping him in our back pocket for a little while. But that call was probably by far the best one that I experienced this year. And until he told me he was a Mets fan, and that was a little disappointing. But he said he'll convert to the Yankees, so we're okay.
Absolutely, it was pretty cool to watch. Well, Dave, thank you for your time. A well-deserved nap coming your way, hopefully soon.
Thanks, Ashlyn.
Well, here's his haul as a whole. 12 draft picks coming to the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll break them all down coming up. But starting in the first round. Thursday night, the number 9 overall selection was cornerback C.J. Henderson from the University of Florida. He might have a calm demeanor, but he can flip that switch when the lights come on.
I describe myself as, very reserved. Guys get that misconception that I'm quiet, but I'm pretty reserved. Open to people that know me, but I work hard to earn my respect, and I plan to do that.
All right, Brian Sexton, John Oehser join us now, and C.J. Henderson, a guy that many felt would go in the first round. A lot of analysts, just reading mock drafts and everything, felt he was probably the second or pretty darn close to Okudah as one of the best cornerbacks in this draft. The Jaguars had him as one of the 4 players they wanted at number 9, and they ended up getting him, John.
Well, yeah, and I think there was a gap between what a lot of observers thought about C.J. Henderson and what the Jaguars and a lot of other teams thought about him. I thought they were going to go defensive tackle early. I've said that all along, but it seems like they felt like pass rush was more of a priority up front and that they needed to get better in the secondary. Jeff Okudah was gone, but C.J. Henderson was right there. They needed prime talent, playmaking talent in the secondary. They didn't have it before C.J. Henderson. Now they feel like they do. All he's got to do is live up to the hype. Number 9 overall pick, top 10. He's supposed to be an all-pro guy in the next couple of years. That's what his expectation level will be, Brian.
Well, I was sold on him once I heard Dan Mullen talk about the way that he approached the game, that he was the first guy on the field and the last guy to leave. The taste that we had of the elite corners recently here, not that Jalen Ramsey didn't work hard, but that he was difficult to deal with, and he certainly was. In listening to Mullen, this guy leads by example, and the team, the Gators, followed him because of the way that he approached it. Look, he's tall, he's got length, he's got elite coverage skills, okay? He didn't have a lot of interceptions, but then they didn't throw it at him that often. In fact, I think I saw that he'd given up 1 touchdown in man-to-man coverage during his time at the University of Florida. So while it wasn't the Derek Brown or Isaiah Simmons or all the sexy names that were being thrown about, none of that really matters. I think we see that now when you look at all the draft choices that the Jaguars accumulated. Not all of them are sexy household names, but what they are good football players. And here's the key now. And Bill Belichick showed the way with this years ago. Who cares what people think about the draft? What do you think? How do these guys fit your system and what you do? And that's what I got from Dave and Doug in listening to their Saturday evening wrap-up news conference. They went after guys that fit their personality, fit their scheme. And C.J. Henderson started the ball rolling. They're excited about it. Todd Wash is excited about it. They wanted a playmaker, John. You said it best. They were looking for someone who could make plays, who could turn the ball over in the secondary. And they obviously believe that the skills that he showed in Gainesville and the Southeastern Conference will translate to Sunday.
So the Jaguars had not 1, but 2 first-round picks. The 20th overall pick, this one came from the LA Rams in that Jalen Ramsey deal. They selected defensive end and linebacker Chaisson from LSU. He missed most of 2018 with an ACL injury, but he got a medical red shirt that year. Bounced back in a big way last season. He doesn't lack for confidence.
I feel like my versatility is so critical. I'm not saying I'm like Tyrann Mathieu, but a player like him, you never know where he's at on the field. He can play different positions from backer to corner to safety or whatever the case may be. Players like that are critical in today's game, and I feel like my versatility allows me to do that. But at the same time, whichever team, whichever the Jaguars want me to play, I'm willing to do without any hesitation.
John, this guy can play, at least he says, can play everywhere. And the pass rush will be the big thing here. But if you can cover, if you can stop the run, that'll be a theme of this draft. And it has been a theme all offseason. They feel like that could be an improvement at this position too. But this guy can do a lot of different things.
Well, if you take your 2 edge players going forward, I think he will be along with Josh Allen. This gives you a better overall presence against the run than when Yannick Ngakoue is in there. So that's a big factor with it. I think it's important to note all the stuff that you hear about drafts beforehand, that's all perception. And the reality is how these teams feel about them. It's been clear from listening to Dave Caldwell in recent days that they really like Chaisson as much as they liked Henderson. If Henderson hadn't been there, this guy may have been their number 9 overall pick. To them, they feel like they've gotten 2 top 10 picks in the first round. So again, they came out of this feeling like a win because he was available at number 20.
And Brian, this guy has an opportunity to, as he moved along in Baton Rouge, get better and better and better. And finally, he's a first-round draft pick, and now he's got to live up to those expectations.
Well, here's some expectations for you. I talked to someone this morning that is tied into the LSU football program. He's an alum over there. He said, if you look at all the athletes they put into the NFL in the years, and have they in the NFL, this guy may be the best athlete that they've ever had come out of that program, or at least in the last 5 years come into the NFL. Said he's an absolute freak athletically, what he can do. The other evening, immediately my ears perked up when Doug Marrone said, look, he's a guy that can play base downs as a sandbacker, and then you can put your hand on the ground and have him rush the quarterback. There aren't a lot of guys that play that way in the NFL because there aren't a lot of guys that play that way in college. This guy has the ability to do a lot of different things. Get out and cover a tight end on second down, get after the quarterback on third down. I'm excited to see him. I only saw a little bit of him in the bowl game against Oklahoma, and he was dominant that day. If that's what we're getting, it's exciting to think about the possibilities. And, John, I just heard you say he's more effective against the run than when Ngakwe's in there. We heard Dave the other night say, talk about inferring reference to getting these guys on the field. It's very interesting now to contemplate, what does this mean for Yannick Ngakoue? Initially, I thought, well, he's done. He had burned the boats, and now the Jaguars are going to move on, but they didn't get offers that wowed them. They've said all along they want him to play here. You talk about putting this kid with what Josh Allen showed us last year, and now mixing in Ngakoue, assuming that he will come back. I have 17.8 million reasons why he should. You've got something special there.
And now we move forward after nabbing a couple of first-round defensive players. We move on to Friday, gentlemen, and time to give the offense a little bit of love. The 42nd pick, the Jags selected wide receiver Laviska Shenault out of Colorado, a strong receiver that can play outside, but it sounds like Doug Marrone has some tricks up his sleeve.
We have some plans. I mean, he's a guy that you can put him in the backfield. He can play wildcat. You can put him as an F tight end. You can do a lot of things with him, and you see it on his tape in 2018 and 19. That's one of the things that we looked at. We went back there, and I said, look, we can do all those things, but the whole key is going to be how well you grasp it. How well you pick it up.
Brian, they have been on this guy's trail for a long time, and it works out where they get him in the second round of this draft.
Well, look, I mean, this guy, first of all, sometimes things just work your way. Last year, Josh Allen fell to 7. This year, Shenault is sitting there at 42. Well, why? Okay. After his sophomore year, 2018, in which he had 6 receiving touchdowns and 5 rushing touchdowns, this guy was the belle of the ball, so to speak. I mean, they were talking about him in very heightened tones as if he might be a top 10 pick. But he wasn't eligible to come out after the 2018 season. So he went back. He had some injury issues and wasn't quite as productive. But when you watch him play, he's explosive. He runs, or he plays faster than he ran. And obviously we know about the core muscle injury. We heard the other night they could use him on jet screens. I mean, this is a guy that you can truly line up, create mismatches. Because remember that the great offensive coordinators don't scheme schemes, they scheme personnel. And so you can find places where this guy will be absolutely mismatched against linebackers or even safeties, because as they say, he eats up space in the middle of the field. Of all the Jaguars draft picks to be excited about, this may be the most, because we're talking about what Gardner Minshew needs to accomplish this year to own the starting job and be the Jaguars franchise quarterback. This guy goes a long way towards helping him do that.
John, Keenan loved him. We heard from Keenan McCardell during this draft process. He certainly loved him. And we didn't hear from Jay Gruden, but I'm sure Jay's pretty happy to have another weapon on offense.
Yeah, their interest in this guy predates Jay Gruden, but I think it really peaked and it focused when they talked to Jay Gruden. Mark Ellens, the director of college scouting, mentioned that when he was on with us, that this is a guy who fits what Jay Gruden wants to do offensively. Jet sweeps, aggressive running. I think he led the nation in the last 2 years in broken tackles from the receiver position. He's an aggressive player. I'm looking forward to watching him because he seems like a different kind of wide receiver / tight end, whatever he's going to play. Not tight end, but playing like a tight end, the receiver position. he's different in terms of physicality than anything they've had at the receiver position in a long time.
Now it's on to round 3 and back to defense, stopping the run, a big theme of the offseason, and it continued in a big way with Devon Hamilton, the big nose tackle from Ohio State, the 73rd overall selection, a big, strong, stout defender in the interior of that defensive line. The Jaguars Draft Recap Show is presented by Florida Blue. You can get answers to all of your COVID-19 questions at Florida Blue's special website at floridablue.com/COVID-19. 4 players in the first 2 days, and the Jaguars entered Saturday with 8 selections. And guess what? They ended up picking all 8 players. Let's start with a 4th-round overview. Ben Bartch, the offensive lineman from Division III St. John's. Josiah Scott from Michigan State. Shaq Quarterman from Miami and from Oak Leaf High School here in Jacksonville. He is happy to come back home.
Being able to stay home is just a different feeling. You know, it's a very different feeling. I'm just so happy that I had the opportunity to do it because, to be honest, most people don't get the chance to do that. So repping the brand has always been a thing for me, especially, you know, Jacksonville with that 904. I've been throwing my 4s up since I got to college. So I'm excited.
Doug Marrone said after the draft that Quarterman's his kind of guy, it feels like, guys. And let's touch on these 4th-round picks quickly here. Starting with Quarterman, what kind of player can the Jags expect here, Brian?
Well, to listen to Manny Diaz, Miami's coach, talk, he's a guy who is old school, all business, right? He wanted to be his best, and then he wanted to help his team win on Saturdays at the University of Miami, and he did that. A strong presence, heard his post-draft comments, and he's thrilled to come home. He wants to play at a high level. He's proud of his family. He's proud of his city, and is excited about the opportunity. So now you take a guy whose desire, right, matches his talent and put him in a situation where he's got an opportunity to be his best in front of his home crowd. I think you're going to get a guy who loves to play the game. He's not an every downs linebacker. He doesn't have to be here, but it looks like he's a guy who can make an impact in some packages.
John, we're sounding like we're starting to get into the depth and development part of the draft here. Bartch on the offensive line, Scott, the cornerback from Michigan State.
Yeah, to me, this is where this draft will be made or broken. In 2 or 3 years, when you look back on it, I'm going to assume the first 4 can play because that's what you're supposed to have. And on those day 1 or day 2, those guys are supposed to be starters. Bartch, if he can develop in a year into a starting level player, and I'm drawing a blank again on the local guy, Quarterman, if he's as good as you get the idea that he believes he is and the team can believe he is, all of a sudden you might have 5 to 6 guys out of this draft that can really play. Let's hope Quarterman is really, really good, because what a defining person for the franchise in terms of leadership, in terms of all those things. He strikes you as a guy. I remember Telvin Smith way back, a 5th-round pick, for a while was sort of a spiritual leader, vocal leader. Quarterman kind of feels like that, doesn't he, guys?
Yeah, he sure does. He does. I got to get a thought in on Bartch here, because I saw that some folks were unhappy taking a Division III player. But they must have forgotten that Ali Marpet from Hobart College in northern New York was a 2nd-round pick back in 2015 by Tampa. He's been a starter ever since. He's got another contract now, and he's even played center and guard. It's not as if these guys don't have the traits. And that goes back to, you're not necessarily looking at their college tape to be able to say, well, they did that against LSU. You're looking to see what their traits are, what their characteristics are. And this guy, long arms, mean, you watch him and he grinds people into the ground. And maybe the most important thing, if you're taking a player from St. John's College in Minnesota, from the Minnesota Intercollegiate Athletic Association, then you need a guy who dominates at that level. He did. So now, and John said it best, give him some time. He's going to need to get up to speed, but he's got all the physical characteristics. The other guy I really liked was the Scott kid from Michigan State. I read somewhere that he was the best tackler among all cornerbacks in this draft. He's 5'9". He's going to have to be.
Let's get on to the deeper rounds today, this afternoon. In the 5th round, Daniel Thomas from Auburn, Colin Johnson from Texas. Then in the 6th round, Jake Luton from Oregon State, the quarterback, and then Tyler Davis, the tight end from Georgia Tech. And in the 7th round, Chris Claybrooks from Memphis. Obviously, the big name here is the quarterback, Luton. That's always, John, the position that you look at, certainly around this organization. Gardner Minshew, a sixth-round pick last year. Luton, a sixth-round pick this year.
Well, third year in a row, they've gone quarterback late. They are clearly taking the approach, we're going to draft him. We're not going to ignore that position. They weren't ready to go high. And maybe Gardner Minshew will allow them not to have to go high, but they're developing, or they're trying to get players who can develop at that spot. I don't know much about him. I certainly know that he is a kid who's overcome a lot. He has the same sort of pedigree as Minshew, meaning he played at a lot of different schools when he was in college, played 3 different schools. For Minshew, that allowed him to pick up the offense very quickly. There was also an element with Gardner, remember, very mature coming in and wasn't overwhelmed by the transition from college to pro. For Jake Luton's sake, you would think he would have that same sort of maturity. I can't sit here and say much about what I think of him as a player because I didn't watch him a whole lot. He's prototype. He appears to throw the ball well. He's certainly a developmental guy. And from listening to Dave Caldwell, it doesn't sound like they're in any particular hurry to go out and get a veteran at this spot. I still think they might at some point go get a veteran. But if you listen to Doug and Dave, they seem to be fine with the quarterback room right now. I think that's significant, Brian.
You know, even though, John, we couldn't get anyone to tell us for sure this spring that Gardner Minshew was absolutely the man. Can't you see it? It sure feels like they have a high level of confidence in him. And why not? The numbers that he put up last year give you a sense. However, there is still that, okay, Gardner, you got to show us again kind of thing. Dave touched on the fact that this kid, Luton, that they got from Oregon State is a different quarterback. He's not the same guy. He's not very mobile. You called him a prototype. He'll stand in the pocket and deliver. And you like to have a little variety among your quarterbacks. I don't know what to make him. I didn't see him much either, but I thought they had to go get a quarterback because even though you said they might still go get a veteran and they can play with their salary cap, it's not like they have a ton of room. You hear the name Cam Newton bounced around. You hear Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. Hey, those guys aren't going to come for $5 million a year. You're going to have to do some serious salary cap room this year if you want to bring them in. So go get Luton. Don't put yourself in a position to have to go get that guy. And then there's a little bit of this to hope that Gardner Minshew comes up and not only shows you what he did last year, but takes it a level above.
And, of course, the other names you saw there, Claybrooks with blazing speed out of Memphis, a kick returner, and then Colin Johnson with that great height out of Texas, 6'6", 222-pound wide receiver for the Texas Longhorns. Let's hear what the head coach had to say about the draft haul this year. Ashlyn Sullivan caught up with Doug Marrone at the end of Saturday.
Here with Jaguars head coach Doug Marrone, moments after the 2020 draft has ended. 12 new players coming to Jacksonville. Coach, how are we feeling about this draft class?
We're excited. I think that, you know, we spent a lot of time, a lot of work, coaches, scouts, great conversations. And, you know, it's, you know, when you're going up there and you're saying, hey, listen, we'd like to get this guy and it's working out that way. And it, like David said multiple times, the draft is going to come to you. And then for him to be there when you're going to go pick, it's great.
And virtually, we were just talking to Dave. It seems like there were very few bumps in the road. And obviously, this is something different, probably something we'll never experience again. But I saw pictures on Twitter with Helen, your wife, there, your kids really involved. Is this something you'll remember, having the family so involved in this draft process?
I think all of us will. You know, everyone that had the opportunity. It's very difficult, obviously, to get, you know, close to a draft or close to a war room. I think, you know, hopefully it's a one-time thing, you know, obviously, you know, from what's going on around the country. But you look at, you know, the job that, you know, the NFL office and the IT people and the video people and, you know, everybody was involved with operations, just getting things set up, having all the coaches. I mean, you really can't say enough about the job that those people have done.
And you've stressed to us ever since the season ended in January that you were going to work on bringing in no drama, high character guys, especially in this draft class. Do you feel like you accomplished that?
I do. I mean, I think, you know, obviously, you know, we did, you know, like we talked about it quite a bit, but we also want to make sure we also brought in good football players. So I don't want people, you know, to say, well, they brought in these guys and they lowered themselves from a standpoint of what talent they were going to bring in. I mean, we just got a great match of these 12 players, of a match of, really good talent, really good potential, and also obviously come from good foundations and good character, and really not a lot of stuff going around them except football.
Coach, I know you have the opportunity to talk to picks after their picks. You're on the phone with them. Is there anything that stood out, a conversation, a player's reaction when you look back at this weekend?
Yeah, I think, maybe not one individual, and haven't gone through it myself, but it just seems that sometimes the later the picks, in my experience, it's almost a louder the celebration, you know what I'm saying, in the background. And, there was a lot of that as we went through, and a lot of, feeling of, really gratitude, of really like, hey, I appreciate this opportunity. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do everything you ask of me. It was a lot of that, and, trying to listen to them, with the people screaming in the background. But there's a lot of emotion. I think that, these players put so much time into it, and and then obviously it comes to today, and it's really the beginning. It's not the end. There was a dream somewhere along the line that when you were young that this day was going to happen. You're going to get picked, and you get picked. You enjoy the day with your family. Wake up tomorrow and start working out and start trying to make sure you can earn your place in this league.
Ashlyn, thank you very much. Great work all weekend in the 2020 NFL Draft. Final thoughts here, guys, quickly. I'm not going to ask you for a grade per se for this draft, but how did they do these last 3 days? John, we'll start with you.
Well, I think they did what they wanted to do. I thought what was striking was the no trade thing. Here you have a team that everybody thought was going to use all this equity and all this capital to move up. And I think Dave said it on his media availability today. He didn't trade for all those picks to come out with not very many players. They felt like they needed to reshape this franchise. They felt like they needed to get younger. There's no way to know how these guys are going to be, but they filled needs, if that's what you want to do when you're drafting. And CJ Henderson, Chaisson, these guys up front, they have playmaking ability. They're what they wanted. Let's see how they turned out. But in terms of the character thing, which Doug Marrone talked about a lot, these are a lot of talented players, and they're high quality players. This has the potential to be the turning point of the franchise in terms of what they do going forward. And they certainly wanted good guys, as opposed to who knows how to define what it's been the last couple of years.
Brian, put a bow on it for us.
Well, they got better on defense, and they gave their quarterback a big play weapon, right? If you just look at the first 3 picks, they got better. Now, a lot of these other guys have to be able to develop. I mean, the big defensive tackle from Ohio State, get some reps from him, get him involved, find a way to find a role for Colin Johnson, at some point. Does Josiah Scott find a role, in a dime package somewhere? How does he contribute? That's all fine and good. But if the first 3, the 2 guys on defense and the big play threat for Gardner Minshew, come around and find meaningful reps and meaningful time on the field, then this was a very good draft. I think when you look at it top to bottom, and you can't put a grade on something like this, I thought they had a very good, very productive 3 days, and got players all across the board. John, I just wanted to underline the one thing you're talking about: character, high quality men, but also hard workers. That was the thing that came through. These were guys that were self-starters. They love to play football, and they want to be their best. Not every player approaches it that way. That's one way to be able to describe some of the guys that we've seen in recent years. They just showed up, not these guys. It sounds like they went looking for guys who they would have to throw out at the end of every day because they wanted to keep working. I like that.
Brian, John, great work all weekend, gentlemen. We'll talk to you, well, probably tomorrow, I guess, once we get moving to the days ahead. Thank you very much. Well done. And thanks to our friends at Florida Blue. Their nurses, community specialists, and sales and service teams can answer your questions about COVID-19, community resources, and enrollment eligibility. Visit floridablue.com and find your local team. Plenty of things to go around for a great weekend. Of course, the football leadership for the Jaguars for the access all week. The public relations staff of the Jags for making it all happen. The Jags IT department, certainly on the business side, the football side, helping keep everybody connected. They did a fantastic job. Jags social media, behind the scenes folks, marketing and digital departments. And yes, last but certainly not least, our Jaguars broadcast crew. We work with them on a daily basis. Very, very good work. Incredible work in a strange time. Way to go, everybody. Great job covering this draft. And that'll do it. The Jaguars come away with 12 players in the 2020 NFL Draft. And thank you for watching the Jaguars Draft Recap Show presented by Florida Blue.